Broadcasting from the studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. It's the Ken Calvert Show with your host, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the casual studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. And coming up on today's podcast, I have a great chat with Greg Allman, the late great, going back to 2010, August of 2010. The Allman Brothers were coming through and about to perform at Pine Knob. As we get rolling here, I'm always reminding myself to remind you, if you wouldn't mind, if you are on Facebook, to please like my Facebook fan page, The Ken Calvert Show. You can follow me on Twitter at Ken Calvert Show as well. And today's podcast is called Who Took the Fun Out of Radio? Now, I've noticed many responses that I've gotten on an earlier podcast, the one I did called Say Ken, Where You Been? At several Detroit radio stations, and I go on and list them, and I want to thank you, but now I'm obsessed. I've become totally obsessed with trying to remember as much as I can about my early days in radio, going back 45 years, 46 years. Wow. A lot of your responses that I got basically stated, oh, that was back when radio was fun. Okay, let me start by saying anyone who works in radio is having more fun than a person has a right to. And in fact, at least half of you listening right now, if not more, probably ever knew what early FM radio was really like. To have the kind of freedom that we did back then, you can't because you're too young, and those days are long gone. Radio today is micromanaged to a level that is beyond my pay grade. I can't fully explain it, but I'm going to sure try. Remember now, who took the fun out of radio? Let me try and break it down for you. And keep in mind that I have not been full-time on the radio for 5.5 years. I was part-time when I retired, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, in 2016. It has changed dramatically since I was doing full-time. First of all, let's go to the broadcast side, and let's start with the PD, the program director. Then you also have the APD, music director, the assistant program director, who is also the music director, whose main gig it is to place the music into the system and print the logs that will then be placed in the studio for the jocks to follow. Are you following? I hope so. I'm trying to make it as simple as I can for you. And usually in most markets, the PD and the APD both do air shifts that are usually voice-tracked. And I assume that most of you know what I mean when I say voice-tracked. That means the jocks' voices are tracked or pre-recorded, then loaded into the system, and they will automatically play in between the songs and the commercial stop sets. It's all contained. You can walk away, and the machine just runs itself. The radio that comes out of your speaker is already done. It's laid in, and a machine is now handling the heavy lifting. That is usually the case starting about 7 o'clock at night, 7 p.m., and rolls through until about 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., and that's when the morning show is likely to come in. And they are usually always live, especially in major markets. Most markets have their own morning show. Some have syndicated shows, morning shows, like Free Beer and Hot Wings, Dave and Chuck the Freak, and so on. Bubba the Love Sponge was syndicated for a while. The absolute pioneer of syndication was, of course, Howard Stern, who early on in his career, pre-syndication, worked at W4 right around 1980, and I think he was there for maybe a little over a year. It's all in his book, Private Parts. But most markets have a live morning show. Obviously, news, talk, and sports are live 24/7. So, Kenny boy, who took the fun out of radio? All right, quickly getting back to the micromanaging portion. As I said, on the air side, there is the PD and the APD music director, And in the early days, not that long ago, that was it. In fact, really early on, there wasn't even a PD. The show host was the PD. And that goes back to the really, really early days of the late 60s, very early 70s. Anyway, most stations also have, and this is the important part now, a consultant. He or she is the person who advises the PD on how to program the ship, also known as the radio station. The consultant works in concert with the PD, the APD, and also along with the operations manager or the VP and general manager, and in fact that may include the radio station's owner, like a Beasley, Cumulus, iHeart, Entercom, Radio.com, et al. But wait, there's more. Several stations have more than one consultant. Some stations have two, and some stations even have a morning show coach. So now we need a bigger boat. And I'm going to get to that answer, who took the fun out of radio, and Greg Allman, I promise. But I think you may see where I'm going here. I remember having air check meetings or daily meetings after the show with the program director, and usually the APD, music director, would sit in as well. Not always, but sometimes. I would leave those meetings doubting my own instincts about how to do radio. The PD would tell me, or actually us, I was usually always doing mornings with other people, or maybe just a partner, but we, or me, always accused of talking too much. Program directors would use an expression like, kitchen sink it. What does that mean? I threw in everything but the kitchen sink during that break. In other words, I was talking too much. Less is more. Music is the hallmark of the radio station. It's not always about you, Ken. These were some of the quotes that I'm passing along to you. I had one national consultant who hated my guts. And pretty sure he did hate my guts. He would always ask me when he came to town. He would always say, "How do you think the show sounded today, Ken?" And I would say, "Really good." But I'm going to guess you didn't. I know he didn't. I just knew he didn't. But he wasn't going to say that. He wanted me to say it. He wanted me to say, well, I could have done this better or that better. You know what I'm trying to say here. Mort Krim, the renowned WDIV Detroit anchor, once told me, we were at a gathering of broadcasters, he once told me that a consultant is a person who will borrow your watch to tell you what time it is. That's brilliant. Let me repeat that for you. A consultant is a person who will borrow your watch to tell you what time it is. Nails it. Now let me just tell you a couple of things real quickly, and I'm not trying to mitigate the podcast by saying this. I have a couple of really good friends, one in particular, Fred Jacobs, that is a brilliant consultant. There is no finer person on the planet than Fred Jacobs, and I highly recommend that you follow Fred Jacobs on Twitter, on Facebook, Jacobs Media. You'll find it. I know you can do that. Fred is a wonderful guy, a very, very, very smart guy. He does know what he's talking about. But he and I often get into really spirited debates about radio. And that's a good thing. Fred is correct about music being the hallmark of the radio station. That's why people listen. They come to enjoy the music first, and sadly enough, the talent second. But what a powerful addendum we are to that music. I used to kid about WCSX. Friends would come to town and say, "How do I find you on the dial?" And I would say, "Listen for the radio station playing More Than a Feeling by Boston, and you found me." Here's where we get into the fun portion of the program. Being restricted to 20 seconds to do your talking, your speaking part in the play, you have 20 seconds to say hello, set an appointment or tease, and talk about what's coming up. That is tough to do. But you have to learn how to do it. You have to get back to the music. You have to beat the competition back into the music and play more music than the competition. It's a must if you want to win. All of those people we talked about on the front end, we'll just call it management right now, okay? We'll say, get over it, Ken. That's radio in 2019. It's backed up by research. And I'm going to say one thing right now that I really think is important. Podcasting was starting to explode in radio while I was still full-time, and that's where we were allowed to talk in our podcast. You could talk all you want. Have a guest interview? Talk all you want. Have a comedian in town? Try and get him in or get him on the phone and talk all you want. You got Steve Perry, you got Bob Seger, you got Elton John, you got Paul McCartney, you got Brian May. Put them in the podcast. Take 20 to 30 seconds out of that podcast, play it on tomorrow's show to support and promote your podcast, which is on the website, which is also a very powerful, important revenue stream for the radio station. Man, I'm on a roll here, not a bagel. Bada boom, bada bing. I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to sound like the guy, the get off my lawn guy. But I will add this. It's my opinion that the radio format did not give birth to the podcast, but it is the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to assists. So I'm getting close to telling you who took the fun out of radio, and we took a hell of a long way to get here. But are you ready? It was me. Blame it on me. It happened in 1977. Steve Dahl was doing mornings at WABX, and he was doing things that hadn't been done before in morning radio. In the early 70s, the morning shift was basically an extension of the all-night show. The middays, afternoons, and evening programs were the big shows. A lot of listeners got up late, and they went to bed late. The morning listeners were the workers. They were the ones hanging with the power AM radio stations for their time and temp, plus traffic and sports. But people were starting to talk about this Steve Dahl guy. He was weird. He was funny. He ate his cereal on the air, and he talked about attractive females in rock and roll, especially Linda Ronstadt. He also talked a lot about how he didn't really want to pursue radio, but thought it would be a great way to get a date. He was from California, and he was fun to listen to. People on the street, because I was hearing it, were asking about Steve Dahl. Nobody had heard anything like this before. But Houston, we have a problem. WABX was owned by Century Broadcasting, the Grafman brothers, Howard and Shelley Grafman. They own that station, one in St. Louis, one in Chicago, and they were looking at properties in L.A. and San Francisco. Shelley Grafman was the rocker of the two brothers. He lived in St. Louis, and he ran, and I do mean he ran, K-She, K-S-H-E. Huge rocker, very successful radio station. He would travel back and forth from Detroit to St. Louis to Detroit, about every 3 weeks, maybe every 2 weeks. Shelley Grafman did not like Steve Dahl. He didn't get it. He didn't get his act at all. He would say, I don't want this guy eating cereal on the air talking about Linda Ronstadt. He's killing us. No, Shelley, he's killing you. You're the only person I hear talking about how bad he is. Shelley Grafman becomes overwhelmed by Steve Dahl. He can't handle it anymore. He has a program director that he has brought in from St. Louis, a guy by the name of Bob Birch. He was a great-looking guy, had all of the swag when it came to wearables, looks. He was Ray-Bans 24/7, starch shirts. He was the guy. And Shelley loved him, adored him, thought he was a genius. Loved his voice, loved his look, loved everything about him. Made him the PD. Well, Birch kind of made me the assistant PD music director. Kind of getting back to the beginning here, right? Sure. Yeah, it was happening back then as well. So, Shelley tells Birch, you got to lose this guy. Do what it takes. Get rid of him, muzzle him, put him on another air shift. I can't handle it anymore. Bob Birch doesn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it at all. So he tells me, the assistant PD, tell Dahl to peel back on the cereal and the talk and just play the music, please. Get Shelley off my ass. I can't do that. Steve Dahl and I are great friends, really good friends. We're doing almost everything together. We're good buddies. But I got to kind of warn Dahl, watch your back. And he gets it. He knows what's going on. He's no dummy at all. Well, at that time, W4, they knew what was going on, and they knew that Steve Dahl was hot. And they went after him. And Dahl, he took the offer, and he was out of there. So what happens? I end up doing mornings. And what happens? Steve Dahl at W4 goes up, 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 and we go down, 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 down. Woe is me, right? Well, I didn't do it. I didn't pull the plug. But that was the day, the first time, that I said, this isn't fun anymore. This isn't what I signed up for. Well, believe me, friends, that was not the day the music died. 'Cause we were singing, bye, bye, Mr. Stephen Dahl. No. But I do want to say one thing. Steve Dahl goes up the dial to 106.7 WWWW. Steve Dahl ends up finding this guy who works in a garage in East Detroit, whose name is George Beyer, who calls him at the radio station and does these voices on the phone. He does cartoon characters like Bullwinkle and Popeye, and a wrestler by the name of Dick the Bruiser. Meanwhile, back down the dial at 99.5 WABX, I'm dying on the vine while my good friend is kicking butt. Dahl goes on to attract the attention of a Chicago radio station, WLUP. I think it was WDAI at the time. And Steve Dahl leaves W4, but he doesn't take George Beyer with him, the guy that does the voices. Nope. Beyer stays back. And guess what? That's where we'll pick up our story down the road. Talk all about WRIF and JJ and the Morning Crew. Whew. That put the fun back into radio. Yeah, those were some good times. So I don't want you to go away thinking that there's no fun in radio. There are ups and downs in radio. More ups than downs, for sure. But there are downs. It's not just a love fest each and every day. No, there are some battles, and you're not going to win every one. In fact, you're not going to win a lot of them. But at the end of the day, it's a hell of a way to say, hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert, and welcome to the cozy studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. And I'm going to put the fun back into this podcast and play back a great interview that I did with Greg Allman back in 2010. May he rest in peace. We lost Mr. Greg Allman back in 2017, May of that year. Thanks for listening. Be well, everybody, and keep it right here on WKEN.
Hello, Ken. Yeah, it's me.
How are you, brother?
Much better.
How are you, Allman, brother?
Doing fine.
Hey, how is your health? You feeling good?
It's real good. It's real good. Got rid of the Hep C, and it wasn't any fun, believe me. It was about half a year of having the flu.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, well, listen, welcome back to the Motor City in town tonight, DTE, along with Rat Dog and Bob Weir. And
All right.
And I got to tell you something, man. The weather is going to be spectacular. You're going to have a rockin' good night out at DTE.
Oh, yeah. We plan on it.
Tell me a little bit about the boys in the band. Everything going well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing just wonderful. And, well, hell, we've had the first part of the year off. I mean, everybody went with their other prospective bands. Me, I just kind of laid around and tried to get well and did. And so we're ready to go. We played about 6-10 we have. And
It's not your job to count. It's your job to
it's my job to count.
Yeah, it's your job to show up and perform, man.
There you go.
How's your voice given the Hep C and whatnot and all the stuff that you when we say Hep C, by the way, hepatitis C, which a lot of people from my generation for some reason, some way, somehow have managed to contract, and it's a
everybody ought to
it's a son of a gun. You should be checked for it. Yes,
it was like get a tattoo, and then I carried it for 20 years.
I can tell you this. I know one thing about it is that it is something that incubates, and it just sort of hangs around in your system, and so a lot
right.
of people,
and then you start to get a little bit older. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
I just turned 60, but you put a little age on it. Maybe pour a little alcohol over it. It'll do you wrong, man.
Yeah.
Your energy suddenly disappears.
Well, the Allman Brothers are based basically in the blues, so I don't think no one would want to draw from sickness or illness or anything ill will. But has it affected your ability to sing? Has your voice?
Not at all.
Your voice is managed to say.
If anything, it's given my voice a half a year rest.
The Allman Brothers have been through town, I would have to guess. I'm just going to guess. 40 times over 40 years.
Yeah. A couple of times we went to Europe. So we've probably been here about 38 times.
And I always ask rock and roll bands and rock stars like you, Greg Allman, to indulge the city of Detroit. But I think for the most part, to a performer, most people do have great memories and great feelings about this rock and roll town, the Motor City, Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, well, that's the music that came from here is the music that I learned to play on.
There you go.
Motown and Chicago blues and Texas blues like Bobby Bland, and T-Bone Walker, stuff like that. But I mean, all this stuff that came from was Soulsville, which later became Motown.
You bet.
All that stuff, man. The guitar sound they got. I mean, if you listen to those recordings closely and try to, I mean, that's why I don't understand why isn't Soulsville still up and running? I mean, there's something about that room. Well, you could ask me, why isn't Capricorn Records up and running?
Yeah, we could ask a lot of questions about why aren't record companies period running anymore, but we would have...
There'd be a two-word answer to each one of them.
Which would cost me my license and would also be the end of the interview, but... I always enjoy to hear Greg Allman's laugh in the background. Now, you guys are getting ready to celebrate. You celebrated your 60th birthday, I believe you said, still recovering from that birthday in December. Coming up is the Allman Brothers' 40th anniversary, and I know you talked to Billboard.com about getting everybody together that you've played with, and I started thinking about this question I'm going to ask you. You're talking about a series of shows at New York's Beacon Theater sometime next year, and according to your quote, you're trying to get all the people you know that you've played with to come in and sit in and play.
That's right.
Here's my question for you. Where's the audience supposed to sit? Because
we got a bunch of nights to do it in.
I was going to say, if you get everybody to show up that you've played with and people that have sat in with the Allmans and vice versa, that's going to be a stage of about 150 people.
Listen, that would be the odds of doing that are the odds are easier to win the lottery.
Yeah. Well, who are you talking about in terms of surprise guests or guests at an Allman Brothers 40th anniversary gig?
Oh man, I can't be telling you that. It's got to be a surprise.
Greg Allman can give me one surprise that may appear with the Allmans at the 40th anniversary. Come on, man.
Well, I guess Mr. Trucks, Mr. Derek Trucks just did a world tour with Mr. Clapton.
Would he bring his friend with him?
I'm just saying he did a tour.
All I want to do is get in the trades, man.
Well, I have had the pleasure of meeting and knowing a lot of people who have passed away now, like Willie Dixon, Muddy Waters. I have friends that I've played with from Little Richard. Little Richard's an old friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And Les Paul, he's played with us. That's as far as I'm going with you, man.
All right, well, hey, Greg Allman, talk to me a little bit about the concert we're going to see tonight. Are we going to see, it seems that most of the bands that are out there this summer are maintaining some new, but a lot of the hardcore staples, the songs that people know and love. The Allmans sticking true to that as well?
About the same, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is a rough year for touring for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Might be because of last year, but we've been doing fairly well this summer.
What sort of music, what sort of songs are you putting out on stage? What can I expect to hear tonight?
And we've been taking a lot of our other songs and then waylaying in the middle of them and going somewhere else and wind it up with another song that you would never expect. Well, like they never expected us to play Dazed and Confused or Layla. I believe we could play just about anything if we tried hard enough.
Well, now you're playing what, a B3, 4, 5 Hammond? What is the Hammond you play?
B3 Hammond.
The big B3. You'd never want to be a B3 Hammond roadie, would you?
Oh, that's changed now. Everything's on wheels. It sits on wheels the whole gig, and you got 4 guys that ease it off and puts the top on it.
You like playing it or singing more?
I like singing more.
Okay. And you were playing guitar until Brother Dwayne came along and you realized, this guy's pretty good. I think I'll move on to the keyboards.
Well, I still play guitar. I just don't play electric guitar. It's like having a dragon on a leash.
Where in the heck did that come from?
It's just, you hit the thing and it's so damn loud. And I'm not I'm not a soloist, but I write most of my songs on acoustic guitar. And when it comes to acoustic guitars, man, I know all about them.
Well, I'm speaking with Greg Allman, and of course, Greg Allman, the infamous Greg Allman, the famous Greg Allman, the celebrated Greg Allman, one of my
infamous.
Yeah. Can I just say my hero, Greg Allman's on the live line with me?
Sounds great.
And the Allman Brothers in town tonight, DTE, on a gorgeous night, going to be about 80 degrees as the sun is setting and overlooking the throngs. I'm going to leave, actually, with this question. You're going to play the part of Dr. Allman, okay? Are you ready for this, Dr. Allman?
Yes.
Dr. Allman, my name is Ken Calvert. Sometimes I feel like I've been tied
take some aspirin and go home.
I've been tied to a whipping post. Tied to a whooping post. Good Lord, I feel like I'm dying. Dr. Allman, what do I take? What is the cure?
You've been working entirely too hard.
I am a rambling man.
Oh, God. That's a good one to leave on.
You son of a pup. I wish you nothing but the greatest. Rock and roll, and good luck on this 40th. And if you got room at the Beacon, put my name on that list, will you?
All right, man.
All right, be well, my friend.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
You can subscribe to the Ken Calvert Show podcast on Apple iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's also available by going directly to www.thekencalvertshow.com. You can reach Ken at kencalvertpodcast@gmail.com. The preceding program is the property of Ken Calvert and may not be rebroadcast without the written permission of Ken Calvert.